Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I'm your host, Heather Sumlin, and today I am interviewing the fabulous Chandler Foreman. Chandler was Miss Texas in 2019 and also in 2020. She is the COVID queen. We talk about her background. We talk about the gap between her teeth, which was a topic of conversation quite a bit during her year as Miss Texas and even in her interview for Miss Texas and possibly even for her Miss America interview as well. And we talked about advice that she has been given that's made a big impact on her. We talk about a defining moment in her life. We talk about so much. We catch up. It's been a while since I've seen Chandler, and I'm so excited for you all to meet her. She is such a sweet soul. Welcome, Chandler. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to talk to you, Heather. It is always a joy just to converse with you and talk life and hear your wisdom.
Oh, okay. Well, now no pressure on me to have to provide wisdom to the Chandler Foreman.
Dun-dun-dun.
Okay, so give our audience a little bit of a backstory on who is Chandler.
Hmm. I feel like that would take so long, a backstory, but since we don't have time for a 2-hour film, um, I'm from Houston, Texas, born and raised in a family where I was the youngest sibling, two-parent home. I grew up with the best examples of integrity and loyalty, what that looks like in my home. So I was able to really see those strengths and weaknesses within my family and kind of like perfect them and make them my own. And so I really revert back to my upbringing as to who I am today, as far as my strong core values. I'm a believer of Jesus Christ and wear my Jesus piece across my chest all times. And yeah, that's a big part of who I am today. And what else? What else? What else? What else is about Chandler? What else is about Chandler? What else is about
Well, how'd I
Chandler?
meet you?
What do you say?
Well, how'd I meet you?
Right, right. And how did we meet? Right. So I grew up also very competitive. Starting at the age of 5, my parents were adamant about putting us in competition. My first competition was 3 competitions at once. It was cheer, track, and music. So at a young age, I understood that my parents wanted me to work my butt off so that I can get these results, but hopefully it can pay for my college. Um, Obviously, later on, some of those activities would fall off, like track. But then I would pick up in high school, and that is, I would discover the pageant system, the pageant world, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it came at a time in my life where I felt it was a defining moment because it's that transition of, okay, you're no longer in middle school, you're going to high school, you have this girls' organization with your sister that's meant to empower women who are your age, 15, 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of complexities that's happening. Plus, you're a pubescent teenager, for goodness sake. So you have all these emotions. High school stinks. And it's that moment of like, what are you going to do? And like I said, I come from strong family values, strong core values. So I always knew that, like my educators and my family said, that I was to be a leader. And I also knew that I was not made to just be a fly on the wall or to just be just to not make a difference. So I felt challenged to do so, and I started exploring avenues while also going through my own insecurities as a high schooler. And that's when I was introduced to compete in the pageant world because it offered all of these things like, yeah, scholarship money. It offered, friends for life. It offered, what else? It offered gowns, beautiful gowns. But I think the thing that allured me the most was that, okay, you're going to get this self confidence that you feel like is the missing puzzle piece to making you that much more of the leader and the assignment that you're supposed to be on. And so that's how I met you through competing after 2. Heather, did I meet you my first year or my second year competing?
Well,
Do you remember?
I didn't meet you as a teen, so it would have been, and I think it was, how many years did you compete before you won Miss Texas?
Feels like forever. But oh, actually, pun intended. It was 1, 2, 3, 1 on the fourth.
I think I met you maybe your second year. I don't think I met
year.
you your first year. I knew who you were. It
You
might.
know what? It was second year. You know why?
Hmm.
Because my first year as Miss, I was still a high schooler.
Mm-hmm.
I was a senior in high school. My second year as Miss, I went off to college and I was in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, gotta get to that mental management, gotta get to that Heather Sumlin. And that's how we met.
So
Because I was Miss Houston.
you mentioned a defining moment in your life. Can you explain? Was there a specific moment or a time that really changed the trajectory of your life?
Now that that was almost 10 years ago, I feel like I've had a few defining moments, but that one was the first. That was the first one in regards to assignment, right? That was the first one in regards to, okay, so this can determine, like you said, the trajectory. This can determine how do you want to go about um, branding yourself at a young age. Now we know all of this content creation. What's your brand? Who's your brand? Back then, if we had all of those terms, I feel like that would have been used at that time. Like, okay, what is your brand? And that's why it was defining for me because my sister and I had our girls' organization, Queen to Queen, which was based off of our sisterhood. Right. She was my big sister. She was my mentor. She never let me see her make a mistake, which some would argue is problematic, but I would argue it allowed me to strive for perfection every day. I know we are not supposed to strive for perfection,
Not supposed to.
but hey, it allowed me to stay out of trouble. I didn't get whoopings by my parents, and it allowed me to stay out of trouble in school. So I think she did something right. So anyway, we wanted to provide that for girls in the community who didn't have sisters or who had sisters and was maybe not being responsible with that mentorship and mentee relationship that it could be. And so I think within that organization, we had many campaigns that reached over 50 states, women outside of the country. Yeah, we had Queen to Queen University, all of these different campaigns and programs where we brought so many young women together and we did different workshops. We hosted so many conferences. I was able to host a conference as Miss Texas. And it was through that time where I was like, okay, I think this is defining for me because even though my sister and I are the representatives of like, hey, we do this with each other. Maybe you can try this. I was still a student because I mean, first of all, we should all have the mindset of being students in life.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still a student because I'm young. We started that organization. I was 14 years old. What do I know about, how much do I really know about maintaining a healthy relationship, right? And I think the first relationship that I realized was unhealthy was the one with myself. The way that I spoke to myself, the way that I viewed myself. Even though I would try to define myself through, these competitions, right? Like I was still, first dating the first chair in band. I was still wrecking it in track. I was doing all of these things. And I felt like I was almost competing, battling my inner self, saying like, see, you being first place in this counters the fact that you're actually not that cute, or you being first in this actually counters the fact that you have this gap in your teeth. Whatever it was, I would always be battling myself. So I knew then that my biggest competitor was always going to be myself, for the good and for the bad, because I can talk myself into winning. I can talk myself into losing as well. And so that's what made it such a defining moment for me because I realized that I really am in my own way at such a young age.
You mentioned the gap. Okay, so it's cool because we talked a lot about how can the gap and whatever. And I remember I think it was Valerie Bell who did she come up with the acronym for the gap?
She did. It was God's anointed purpose. That's right. God's anointed purpose.
I just remember I remember, I want to say you came in my office one day and you were excited about it because you're like, oh my gosh, Valerie's so smart. This was so cool. It was like a God moment. But it was really cool because you did, as Miss Texas, talk about the fact that you have a gap between your teeth. So go ahead and talk about it. Tell us, what are some of the things that you used to tell the kids? Because I find it to be fascinating. Most of us are like, we're going to go get braces and all the things. What was your thoughts?
I was going to get braces. Poor Heather, you had to hear me talk about this all the time. And if it wasn't for people like you, people like Valerie, in a village to really transform my thinking that, hey, use this as your superpower. Use this as the story to, um, really encourage other young women that our differences are what makes us who we are. They're what makes us stronger and that much more of storytellers to relate to those who may be in the same position, but, just wearing a different pair of shoes. So it was rough for me because I'm the only one in my family who has it. And I just remember being in the mirror and putting any object I could, like right here, like, oh, this is what I would look like. Okay, I'd be kind of cute. I mean, anything, a Capri Sun straw. If I found something white, I struck gold in because it looked like I really don't have it. My teeth are straight across. And I would just be so happy when I discovered, like, oh my gosh, it's like whenever I would insert something there, it's like I would be just that much better. I'd be that much greater. And the reason why I didn't think I was great is because the funny thing is, I didn't see it as a huge problem before. But when I was in high school and I was interested in this guy, see, that's why you don't let guys, we're going to get into that another day, but you don't let men try to tell you about you, okay? Unless it's your husband, but who's gifted in God. Okay, but anyways, I was interested in this guy, and long story short, he wound up saying, I don't want to talk to you because your gap is the size of a football field goal. And oh my gosh, I was distraught. The little sophomore in me, I was like, oh, going back to the drawing board. I'm not as cool and cute as I thought I was. And I had went home crying to my mom, and I was like, okay, we got to schedule a braces appointment, because if this is what's keeping me from being that much, that more then we got to get this fixed. My mom tried to talk me out of it. Everybody tried to talk me out of it. Nobody seemed to be as excited as I was, which in hindsight, I'm glad they weren't, because they're probably like, girl, you got a lot of things to fix, but it ain't your gap. And that's so true. Like, the gap is just the external, right? Because we're all just dignified dirt in his eyes anyway. But I remember I went to my track coach. I had my braces appointment scheduled for April 13th. And whatever year that was a long time ago. And my track coach, she was so blunt, and I loved her for it. She was sarcastic and all the things, but she was going to tell you like it is in the best way, and you're going to receive it. And so I remember being so excited to tell her, like, Coach, we're striking gold. I am closing my gap. I'm about to be that much more beautiful. Be prepared. I'm going to be a brand new woman. And she was like, you sure about that? And I was like, yeah, why aren't you excited? Like, be excited with me. She was like, well, I'm not, because I think your teeth are just fine. But if that's what you want to do, and I'm thinking like, wow, she's not giving me, now why would I expect my sarcastic coach to give me some other jovial energy? But I just knew she was going to hype me up there. And she didn't. And she basically talked about how Madonna, the singer, was famous for her gap, and said that's the reason, a huge reason why people respected her and loved her, because she kept it. She was like, I kind of see you the same way. Like, I think your gap is beautiful, and I'm not just saying it because I tell you the truth, and she would. And she was like, I think you need to look at this as something that makes you different. Why would you want to look like everybody else? And so then I went home and I was like, all right, Mom, even though you probably told me this a trillion times, Coach said I don't need these braces. So perhaps we should schedule we should rain check that braces appointment. And to this day, I haven't picked up that check. So I still have I still have this gap, and I'm so glad that I do, that I didn't go forward with that, because it was more than just about this gap, right?
Hmm.
It was more than, I tell the story about, oh yeah, it's about the teeth, it's about the teeth, it's about the teeth. It's deeper, because it's really about, even though I had someone else tell me, it's so many messages in it. One is about having a village and being surrounded by the people who will build you up, because that's so important. You can be surrounded by a lot of people who um, would have said, girl, close the heads, close that. That is blocking you from being great, really crazily enough. But I didn't have anybody who backed up my decision. Now that I think about it, not one person backed me up. Um, so village is important, but also too, as far as self, um, you really have to ask yourself, especially during that transitional period as a high schooler, and even just as a woman in general, with all of these things changing, with all these people, altering this and changing that, is there not one thing that you love about yourself? We all want to be beautiful as women, right? But like, truthfully, what is our metric of beautiful, right? And if our metric is by somebody else's standards, then we need to go back and ask ourselves, okay, so am I living for the eye of men, or am I tapping back into my values of what I believe is beautiful? Am I carrying myself like a woman of God? Am I dressing in the way that I want to be addressed? Am I respecting myself? If I'm following all of those codes, God is going to make sure I'm good regardless. I'm going to be in the places and the spaces that He wants me to be in. And if He leads me to make some sort of alteration, which I don't think God would ever guide us to say, hey, go get that tummy tuck or whatever it is. I mean, if that's your preference, that's fine. But, we really have to go back to our core values, which my core values, my faith, and that involved a village, and that involved self-reflection, that involved, hey, you are a peculiar people, you're a chosen generation, and I'm peculiar, and I rocked with it.
What I love about your whole story with your teeth is that in pageantry, oftentimes we're expected, I guess you could say, to change, alter, enhance in order to obtain this crown, right? And the fact that when you say nobody said to change it, it means even those who were encouraging you to go forward for Miss Texas, like, wait a minute, this is part of what makes you unique, special, different. To me, it fits your personality. Like, you're super fun all the time. I don't know if you're super fun all the time, but like, that's what you show. That's what you exude. Even your TikTok now, like, I follow you every now and again, and I'll see your little TikTok videos because now you're an anchor. And so you're on the news, and then you do your little behind the scenes and fun little dance moves with your co-anchor and everything. And you just bring a lot of life to everyone around you. And you don't need perfect teeth to do that.
Right, right, right,
I think
right.
I just have always thought that I always looked forward to Chandler being on my schedule. Like, anytime
Yay!
I had a day when I knew I was going to talk to Chandler, and y'all, Chandler was Miss Texas for 2 years. So you won in 2019.
Right.
The world shut down. You went to Miss America and you were top 12 at Miss America, right? Top 12.
Yes, correct.
And then you went on to continue to be Miss Texas longer than anyone in history because there was not a competition the next summer. You mentioned earlier that you always strive for perfection, partly because of your sister. And yet perfection's not possible. And so one of the questions I ask everybody is, how do you define winning? So as someone who's accomplished a lot of things, what's your definition of winning?
I like this question because it's obviously subjective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've won at everything, right?
Right.
I think I may have won some titles and won some awards. Um, but as far as my definition of winning, I think it is winning is truly when you feel satisfied about the hard work that you put in. I think
Mm.
that's one. And that doesn't always come with a medal. That doesn't always come with the crown. That doesn't always come with first place. That doesn't always come with the job that you're applying for, right? But when you're able to reflect over your character, your performance, your input, and say, I left it all out there. I won. That's winning to me.
You know, you've had Queen to Queen. Is that still in existence?
It is not, but it's so funny. My sister and I have talked about how we can rebrand that in this season of our lives.
Yeah, rebrand and reboot Queen to Queen.
Rebrand and reboot. Us being in different cities made it a bit difficult, and now we're even further.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we are always a text and a call away, but you know,
But through that whole experience, and then just through life in general, you've done a lot of things. So you've been Miss Texas, and now you're working in journalism. So you are in anchor. And if I recall correctly, when you were Miss Texas, and or even beforehand, like you've always wanted to be in broadcast in some form or fashion. I mean,
correct.
I know because when we were developing your school program, I totally remember this. When we were, because that's one of the things that I help with from time to time is creating
You
ideas.
did it.
And we sat there and and you did a full on game show as your
Yes.
school program for these kids, and so fun. It was just so fun. But I think ultimately you wanted to have a talk show, like have your own talk show, which one day it's so gonna
That's right.
happen. It's gonna happen. Um, but through all of this, what's a piece of advice that you've been given that has made the biggest impact on you? So whether that's through pageantry, sports, journalism, like what are things when you think about things that you've been told?
I have been, especially being my career starting in media, I feel like there's so many lessons that I have. Like I have a book full of
Mm-hmm.
lessons, but um, one that resonates with me, and possibly two. One that resonates with me is truly, I didn't realize the depth of what this meant before, but now I truly do. And that is, um, we have the same 24 hours, right? Now, what are you going to do in this day? How are you going to apply in this 24 hours yourself to get to your goal that where it is you want to be, right? So, how you show up today, how you show up tomorrow, how you show up the next day, what are you going to put into that time? How are you going to be intentional with your time so that, first of all, you're learning from your mistakes and you're also getting that much closer to winning, right? Um, like I said, we have the same 24 hours. And I think one thing a feeling I can't stand is when I'm talking about something that I want and I look back on my week and I'm like, I did nothing to apply myself to that dream. And it's like, well, you don't have nobody else to blame but yourself because you didn't apply yourself. And I think another huge lesson, I have to say this, is control what you can control and let go of what you can't. There's nothing wrong with wanting control, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in control. As a matter of fact, it kind of resembles in some ways that you have a plan, that you have a goal, that you have a mindset, right? You have some structure going on. Um, but when you can't handle the outcome of what it's not what you intended for, you can destruct if you don't know how to handle that properly. And you are going to be the one destroyed at the end because that's the ebbs and flows of life. I don't know the percentage, but I'm sure the percentage is very large of what we actually as individuals are able to control most of. We're able to control the steering wheel when we're driving. Sure. We're able to control how much milk that we're pouring in our cereal or how much creamer that we're pouring in our coffee, right? as we are dealing with interpersonal relationships, as we're dealing with careers, right? We don't, people from all walks of life, people with different mindsets, people with different perspectives, different spaces. We don't know how everybody else is going to show up, but we do have control over how we're going to show up. That we have control of our own feelings. We have control of we're going to let that get to us today. Satan, you will not. And how we're going to seize the day, going back to the quote that I said earlier, that I said I had earlier. You know, you are in control of how much, how little of what you put into things.
I like to say, if you can't control it, it probably doesn't deserve your attention.
Correct.
Like, it's
Very true.
a lot of the things that we spend time just marinating on and worrying about and focusing on it, and me too, I'm not immune to this, are things that are outside of our control. We can't change it. We can't influence it. We can't impact it. We can't make it different. So why are we spending so much time, energy, and effort on it? And so it doesn't deserve the attention that we're throwing at it. And so I
Yeah.
like what you're saying. I also like the whole 24 hours. I remember Ashley had gone to my daughter had gone to like a camp, cheer camp. And it was at A&M, and they had like one of these like camps for their competitive team. And the captain, I think she's the captain of that team. Ashley was just enamored by her, and walks up to her. She was in a sorority. She was super busy and all these leadership things. And Ashley walked up to her and she's like, "How do you do it? How do you do sorority and be the captain of this team and be involved in all this?" And she says, "Someone told me once that the president of the United States has the same amount of hours in a day as you do. And if they can run the free world, you can do whatever it is you want to do."
That's right.
And
That's right.
so, and that resonated with me. Like, I took something away from that because I'm like, here's this college kid
Yeah.
saying, and just really putting it into perspective that we all, like you said, have the same amount of time. It's what we do with that time that determines where we're going to go.
That's right.
And so if you want to stay stuck, don't do nothing. If you want to move forward, change your mindset, change your direction, change your path, change your, maybe possibly even your influences, the people that you talk to. You're like the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with, something like that.
Oh,
Kind of cool. Kind of
and your
cool.
mindset for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because your mind is that's where the enemy wants to attack you. Number one, he comes to steal your mind, but definitely, um, what's that statistic? We have over 40,000 thoughts in a day or something like that. So, if we spend as much time as our mind runs, if we spend that much more time being intentional, redirecting those thoughts to things that we want to fixate on, right? Fixate our thoughts on what's light, what's true, what's pure. We can find ourselves less anxious, probably less worrisome, and more productive. Because, truthfully, like overthinking, in a way, is a form of sub- subconscious procrastination, right? Because it's like I'm spending all this time thinking, or I'm spending all this time worrying. And what are you getting done? Worrying don't solve nothing. Worrying don't work.
It's interesting. My dad has this quote. He says, "Perfection is the purest form of procrastination."
Hmm.
Because when you're striving to be perfect, sometimes you wait until you're perfect before you actually pursue whatever that thing
That too.
is.
Yeah.
And so then you procrastinate.
Right.
And so let's just move. We
Right.
just move. So speaking of moving, you moved to a different part of Texas. You changed careers and everything. Real quick, what are you up to now? How can people follow you? How can people get to learn more about you? What's all your social media handles? Like, tell us how to follow.
So yes, I am currently a morning anchor for ABC Big Two News, and I'm in Odessa, Texas, so very far from home, and very far from my second home, which was Dallas. And by far, I mean far in distance and far in environment. I went from a big city gal to understanding that and appreciating the not so big city.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like
and
country
so,
folk.
What you
Some
say?
country folk, maybe.
Right. Or I don't even know if they're country over. I don't even know what you call it. But I tell you what, they're very loving and they're very kind. But that's what you get when when you go to a smaller town. You
Mm-hmm.
get kind people. You get people who are not hesitant to give you the shirt off their back. And I used to hear that quote like, "I give them the shirt off my back." And I'd be like, "Who's really doing that?" Right? Out here, I have met so many people who are quite literally doing that or willing to do that, and they don't know me from a can of paint.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I really do have a village out here as well, which it's been a tremendous blessing because I know how hard this could have been if I didn't have a village.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so I'm out here in the West, serving every morning, bright and early at 2 a.m.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, 2 a.m. is when I wake up. 5 a.m. is when we go on air, okay? From 5 to 8. And, I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy meeting people in this community. I enjoy those that make the oil go round and running. I enjoy meeting small business owners, big business owners, the nonprofits, the restaurants, the really the mom and pop of this town is something that I've really enjoyed getting acclimated with. Um, and if you would like to follow me, I am on TikTok and Instagram. It's actually my whole name, Chandler Foreman. When I transitioned into news, I'm like, okay, no more nicknames, no more Queen Chandler. Like, yes, I am a queen. God gave me my crown when I was born, but I got to be serious. I'm an adult now. And so, yeah, so usually I'm just being myself on social media. I don't want to say I rebranded. My foundation is still the same. Like, I always resort to some sort of humor. I'm always giving a hot take or some sort of opinion nobody probably asked for, but some people still seem to engage with me. And I usually like positive content. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like to. I don't like to really feed off of negativity. And on my Instagram, you can catch me posting my Christian content as well. So a lot of things about personality and just where I am as a careered woman now. It's kind of crazy saying that with you, Heather, because last time we've had this long of a conversation, I was nowhere near my career. I was in my college career,
Mm-hmm.
uh, getting my degree from UNT. So to be on this side talking to you is almost like a foreshadowing moment because it's like, whoa, look at us on this side of
Look
things.
at you.
You with your own business, and which you've always been a businesswoman, let's be clear.
Mm-hmm.
But just to talk to you now, like in this way, is a full circle moment.
Well, I'm proud of you for continuing to use your voice, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, uh, the anchor mic, whatever it
Right.
is. I'm proud of you, and I know that the sky's the limit for you. And so I'm really hopeful that wherever God is sending you, that you go 100% full force and are intentional each and every day. Thank you so much. Here's what we're gonna do. We are going to spend some time together for my Patreon members. If you are not already a Patreon member, you are going to want to join She Wins Solutions for Women Patreon channel. We're going to do an episode for women. We're going to do another episode for pageant participants. So if you're in the pageant world and you are not following my Patreon, I highly recommend that you join because we would love to have you. And Chandler, I'm going to pick your brain.